Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. Bradley's mother narcissistic school and passed away 3 months ago. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will be then taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. That's 518-474-8390 and voice your concerns to Governor Hochul to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. I've got a brand new guest on. I have Vanessa Russell on. She is founder and executive director of Love Never Fails. This company started December of 2011 to present time, 11 years and 4 months in Dublin, California. Love Never Fails is committed to the restoration, education, and protection of young people who are at risk or currently being sexually exploited in California. Since their inception, they have educated thousands on this issue, trained over 100 mentors for positive change, and launched an elementary, middle, and high school abuse prevention program, and located over 100 missing and exploited women and children, and provided young people with sustainable jobs in IT, real estate, banking, healthcare, etc. They are a state-certified cybersecurity pre-apprenticeship program, Cisco Networking Academy, CalJOBs trainer, and Department of Rehab vendor. And I welcome you, Vanessa. How did you get started and encompassing all of this?
Oh, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today, Marianne. I started just simply by deciding to teach inner city kids dance. I was working in the tech world. I myself am a survivor of many things as a child, just abuse, poverty, foster care, and a variety of other challenges growing up, and decided that even though I was had reached this place in my life where I was able to provide for my family and doing really well economically and emotionally, mentally, I wanted to give back. I wanted to go back and connect with inner city kids and teach them dance, and I thought that's what I would be doing. Well, I guess there were other plans in store for me because one of my 15-year-old dance students unfortunately was raped in the city of Hayward, California, and sold throughout California for a year.
Mm.
In December of 2011, I made probably one of the best decisions of my life, and that was to say yes to starting an organization which I called Love Never Fails, because I really felt very ill-equipped to do anything to respond to the abuse that she was experiencing. But in my time of quietness, in my time of prayer, actually,
Mhm.
um, got I got a very clear message, which is just all you have to do is love her,
Mhm.
and that's enough, and it won't fail. And so that's what's led me to start the organization, and I've been here now almost 12 years.
That is really impressive, to get that going and, did you find her? Were you able to rescue her?
Yes, so I came in contact with her multiple times over the course of the next year. And Unfortunately, she was in and out of foster care homes, and picked up by law enforcement, and would be right back out on the streets within a couple of days, because of something that we know is called trauma bonding or Stockholm syndrome, which
Mhm.
leads people to reconnect with their abusers, and especially children. And so after about a year, she was actually taken out of state, and that's when she was able to stabilize. She was able to understand that her exploiter was not, her, someone who loved her, somebody who was, the only person that was there for her, all those things that coercive, manipulative people will tell exploited children. She kind of could see through that, and she was able to make some changes in her life thereafter. And so, I wouldn't say, as a group of us, people, that kind of help her to stabilize, including, she actually was adopted by one of our volunteers who was also a
Oh,
survivor. And she graduated from high school with honors, and she's doing really well in her life. We're so very proud of her.
that's really good to hear. Have you found that when people have been in foster care, that when they do grow up and even have kids of their own, CPS is at their door bothering them?
Well, yes, I think that there is a vulnerability that we all have. If you know anything about adverse childhood
Mhm,
experiences, ACEs, those of us that have very high ACEs have a very high propensity for being system involved in
mhm,
our lives, and also our children are also a very high propensity for getting involved with either foster care or demonstrating some kind of mental health disorders, or differently abled, and or incarceration is
mhm,
things as harsh as incarceration, or addictions. I mean, all the markers for having a traumatic life um, can be oftentimes found in our lineage. And so it's generational trauma. And so, yeah, absolutely.
mhm. And when you got involved into cyber security, how did that all play out? How did you get involved in that?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing, right? So my mom actually, so when I was growing up, my mom, I was in foster care as a baby, but she was able to get me back, and she moved us to San Francisco, and we survived. Single mom, fleeing from a domestic violence situation with my dad, really working hard, working for the phone company. And she had very little technical experience, but she was starting to get interested in things like T1s and T3s, and some of the technology that the phone company was offering to customers. And sometimes she would talk to me about it, and she started going to school for an information systems management course with the University of San Francisco, and that was very inspirational to me. I actually ended up taking the same course that she did, and later on, and graduating with my bachelor's. It took me about 10 years to do that. But So we started to enter into this tech space with absolutely no point of reference, no familial support, and just kind of philander through the and what I found is that I had a real knack for it. So as
Mhm.
soon as I entered in, within, I'd say, 2 months, I was promoted, and I was promoted like every 3 months to the next level. Came in as a technical analyst. Then a few months later, I was a senior technical analyst. Then I became the manager. Then I was a senior manager, and I just kept climbing the ladder. And this was again at a telco, and then I went into the .com world
Mm.
right before the bust, and was, there you could just have half of a brain and you would just do really, really well. So, not putting myself down, but I did pretty well in the .com rise. And I was fortunate enough to kind of move over to local government as an IT manager. So I didn't experience the .com busts like many of us did. So I was able to kind of hold on, which was really important since I was a single mom. I needed to provide for my child.
Mhm,
But yeah, the the tech world has been good to me. It has really helped me. I'm a very curious person.
mhm,
I'm tenacious. I'm resilient. I'm thick-skinned, and I always like to tell my students, and I say this to them because I know what it's like to be in their shoes.
mhm,
My IT Biz Tech Academy students, I say, you know what? You've been through the worst of it, and you're resilient and you're brilliant. Own it, believe it, take it into whatever pathway you go in. And so I worked in the tech world in various positions for 20 some odd years. I think it was 25, 26 or so when I quote unquote retired in 2018 to do this work full time.
mhm.
And shortly thereafter, Merritt College approached me asking me to come on as an adjunct professor to teach cybersecurity
Mm,
to and other classes to underserved, under-resourced community members. And IT Biz Tech Academy is really fortified with partners like Merit, like Oakland Adult and Career Education, like CEWS, Google, Cisco. They've all poured into our students in such an incredible way. And here we are, providing career opportunities through partners like 110 and UPro, and getting people into sustainable, economically sustainable careers
mhm,
that will provide, just like we said, ACEs kind of like spoils the batch, right? My
mhm.
hope is to restore the batch so we can get some of these young people that have babies, get those babies onto a different pathway so we can have better, stronger, more fortified communities.
I think that's wonderful because I always said, we've gotta put these young people back to work. We've gotta give them some type of purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had students come up and they're probably doing so well, and it's all it's all because of all your hard work in
That's
the
amazing.
cybers yeah, and with the cybersecurity, do you go into even, domestic violence shelters and help women that
Yeah.
are
It's so funny you should ask me that. We have Love Never Fails actually has 7 houses now. We have 2 houses for women and children, or women that are single or women that are pregnant. We have one house for girls ages 13 to 17. We have 3 houses for men, 2 of which are for homeless or trafficked men. One is for men who have been previously incarcerated. And then we have a home for girls that are aging out of the foster care system, 18 to 21-year-olds. And so we have 7 houses total, 47 beds. And the IT Biz Tech Academy is available to all of them. And I will tell you that those who have participated have experienced some tremendous success.
Mhm,
So one example is one of our first cohort, we had a young lady named Tish. Tish was trafficked for 8 years.
mm,
She was held hostage, or her child rather was held hostage until she made her daily quota.
mm,
And I'm happy to say she graduated from our first cohort as the valedictorian. And she has gone on to receive a position working at Cisco Systems as a learning at Cisco lab engineer. And so she is an incredible testament to what the brilliance that many of these people have. And I'll just tell you, our Tech Academy, we educate about 200 students a year. Of those students, 86% are Black and Latino, and 72% are women. And which those stats are unheard of in the tech world. You don't see those kinds of stats. And so for them to come through and then to have a placement rate of about 60% um, is just, I don't even know what to say. I'm so grateful and I'm so amazed by these people that have been through so much,
mhm,
and yet they persevere. And they and one thing too I want to mention, Psychology Today did an article. They were kind enough to include me in an article, and it was written by Misty Purdue, and it just talked about the kinds of danger that a survivor of human trafficking is susceptible to, or is experiencing, not susceptible to, but actually really experiencing.
mhm,
Interestingly, what we talked about is that it makes you a great candidate for a role like in cybersecurity. And people don't always think about that. But when you are on the street being bought,
yeah,
you're looking around, you're checking, you're hyper vigilant, you're making sure that you're safe. You're looking at people going, what's your next move going to be? What now? These are horrible things to say that
mhm,
somebody would have to deal with. But guess what? They did.
mhm,
And so, because they have a mind that thinks like this, it's an interesting thing to say, that skill is actually quite valuable. that you have the ability to anticipate the next moods of another person
Mhm.
and to think about how might I design, this routine, this maybe artificial intelligence routine, or how might I anticipate that someone is going to scam me,
Mm.
take advantage of me, harm me online, digitally, or in person. And so these are things that lend itself to cybersecurity if you really think about it.
That is really fascinating, that I mean, all of the cybersecurity, I don't understand it much. I'm not. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's great that people can be trained in this and to, in turn, help, um, the police possibly, or,
Sure.
other entities like that.
Yeah, right now we have an investigator that is helping us to find missing children, and she is a survivor of human trafficking.
Mhm,
She cooperates with law enforcement and the FBI and community partners, and she does it in a trauma informed way. So that's the beauty of when you empower a survivor to be an advocate and also an investigator. They are, there's no judgment in them, 9 times out of 10, and they have that compassion and that care, and they
mm,
know where to look, and they know what the patterns are, and so and then we also have survivor advocates, in different cities in the Bay Area that are acting as a liaison between the law enforcement and schools and community members, again, because they bring a certain essence, a certain ability that is really hard to find, and then once they're technically trained, man, they're they are a force to be reckoned with.
mhm. Oh, I would say with all that, even it's a horrible experience, that it can be turned into something positive and they can give back to society, and,
Mhm,
that creates good self-esteem, and that's what these people need, especially, when you mentioned uh, eh, the one home with men that had been incarcerated.
mhm, yeah.
Do they have a lot to offer as far as cybersecurity? I'm sure they must.
That one's a little bit tough because most cybersecurity houses are not going to hire someone that has a record. And so the kinds of security that they may be involved in is maybe physical security, surveillance of a physical uh, layout. And it depends on whether the thing that you're securing digitally is monetary, what kind of crime someone did,
Mm,
that caused them to be incarcerated. So some of that varies, but there are lots of second chance or
mm,
and fair choice employment opportunities and employers that are starting to come forth.
mhm,
And we're working with agencies like Checker that really are leading the way and opening the doors for previously incarcerated people to have access to these economically sustainable jobs like a cybersecurity position.
mhm,
We find that small business entrepreneurship is probably the best solution in some of these instances because um, we're not just teaching people about cybersecurity, we're teaching them how to either become sales reps or how to do customer service or project management, specifically Agile Scrum Masters, or small business entrepreneurship where they might have a mom and pop computer repair business, which can be very lucrative and
mhm.
again, more accessible to someone who has a record.
Yeah, I'm just so glad you're doing this to help these people that have gone through human trafficking, and I'm sure you've heard stories of how they've even gotten into that, and have you found that sometimes their families get them into this?
Oh, yes, very frequently. You'd be surprised. I have to say that's an area. There's a term so I'm a clinical person. I'm actually in the process of pursuing my doctorate in psychology, and so there's a term that's called countertransference, right, or
Mhm,
transference rather. And I find that I have such a hard time. I'm a mommy, and I'm like mama bear.
Right.
hardcore. And when I hear about people selling their children, oh, it's so hard. So I have to kind of, I have someone, and I have a my one of my colleagues who I just love, my sister Jen, who helps me in this area because I have such a hard time with this scenario, which is so
Mhm.
prevalent, where a parent becomes so desperate in their addiction or in their abuse or in their trauma, where they actually sell their child. And some parents have very malicious intent, but many of them do not.
Mhm.
And it's just, it's so hard for me to stomach because I
Yeah.
just, I love my babies so much, and even the ones that aren't my babies, I still call them my babies.
Mhm.
All the people in the program, I think they're my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I take it very seriously when I hear that. I've had a young man who was sold for drugs and by his mother to boyfriends and kept in a cage. I've had women that have been sold by their mothers. I've had, people sold because they thought they were giving their children a better life, sold and, given over to coyotes who brought them into the US for a quote unquote better life, maybe because they just had nothing, no finances to offer them in their country. And and only to be brought here to, be trafficked, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, that's sad. The ones do you find these parents, are they, I don't know, dealt with legally?
Usually not. I haven't seen any of them dealt with legally.
Mm.
Not one. I've never seen a parent held accountable for the harm. And I have mixed feelings about that. You know, I I I think that there should be some accountability.
Mhm.
And I know your show is called Slamming the Gavel. Boy, do I want to slam the gavel. That's where I'm like, Jay, help me be empathetic, help me be kind, and think about their personal. But what you find oftentimes is this is generational again.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, my mom sold me, and now I'm selling you, and this is what we do to get by. This is how we survive. And so I have to remind myself that I got to look at the bigger system here. And I have to say, what systems of oppression are in place that are keeping certain people in the positions that they've always been,
Mm.
not allowing them to operate in newfound freedom and not empowering them
Mm.
to find their purpose and their essence, their thing that they are, called to do, that they are that they get joy from. And we all have it, but how many times do we really ask people even that question, even when they're in school? Does anybody ever ask a student, like, what do you really want to do? Let's
Mhm.
partner with you on that. A lot of people don't have families that are doing that.
Mhm.
Just like, please graduate from high school and get, your basic job working at a basic, I don't know, retail and barely survive. And it's like, why is that kind of the status quo? Why isn't there more being done to reach, especially the underserved and under-resourced, and ask them, what is your joy? What is your purpose?
Mhm.
What are the plans in that you'd like me to undergird with my time, my effort, my mentoring, whatever it may be?
Now, do you go to the schools and talk to, um, students? And,
Mhm.
have you ever found any students that are being trafficked and no one knows it?
Oh yeah, they disclose during the classes. I had a young person just last week, and I actually need to call and speak with him. He was about 10 years old, and he said, raised his hand up in my while I was speaking, and he says, "What if the people that are closest to you are the ones that you need to get away from?"
Mm.
He said that in my class. And I said, "Okay, let's talk afterwards." And he had to leave early. So, I'm gonna I was able to get his contact information so I can find out what exactly did you mean by that.
Mhm.
But we've had people that tell us that someone's grooming them online. We've
Mhm.
people tell us that one story in particular happened at a school that I was teaching at a few years back, and the daughter was being molested by the mom's husband, and it was a high school, and she shared it with me, and she said something's bad is going on, and we made a report, and he was arrested, and he was removed from the home. And the reason she hadn't made the report is because she knew that her mom would have a very hard financial time providing for the home without him there. So she said, I'll just take one for the team, and never reported it, and it was going on for a long while. But of course, the mom was so supportive. Now, I've also seen instances where the mom says, you took my boyfriend. The mom doesn't believe. The mom
Mhm.
is just not supportive, which is a whole nother level of pain for that child, right? And then I've seen instances where the mom actually was an accomplice, and it was, one instance, sad to say, we had a beautiful little 8-year-old daughter, community daughter, I call her,
Mhm.
Sophia Mason, who was killed by her mother and her mother's exploiter, and this happened last year.
Mhm.
And, yeah, that she was murdered, and, that trial is underway. Of course, I can say she was murdered because I'm pretty confident of that,
Mhm.
but, it's still in the court of law, but these things need to be, we've actually been hoping to start a law called the SOS, law in Sophia Mason's name, um, because more needs to be done to actually train um, workers and law enforcement about how to deal with exploited people when um, they have children. And it doesn't mean that you criminalize them and take their children away automatically. That's
Mhm.
not right either. But
Mhm.
you need to know how to do well checks, and you
Mhm.
need what you're looking for, and you need to, hopefully, this is the hope, provide services to
Mhm.
that exploited mother, so that that child is not being molested, not being killed like
Mhm.
Sophia.
Yeah, that's tragic. So are you going to educate CPS and get them
So,
yeah, uh, they're removing kids at an alarming rate,
yeah,
and they're ending up in foster care where they are being trafficked. It's from the frying pan to the fire.
right. Yeah. So what we have done is we've opened a house, which is a foster care diversion program.
Mhm.
It's a house for girls ages 13 to 17. We only have 4 beds, very small. But the idea here is, think about this. Some people don't know that this is how it works, right? So a child runs away. There are very lax laws on rules on running away nowadays.
Mhm.
So child runs away, you can barely get anyone to come out, law enforcement to come out. You can barely get a flyer put together. All of that is supposed to happen within a very short period of time. And then a report is supposed to be filed with the National Missing and Exploited Children with NCMEC, and many times none of that is happening, but child runs away, and they think, oh, just a runaway, and they're with their boyfriend, and they're getting high, and whatever judgments we put on people. So they run away. When they come back, and after they've been exploited, which it sounds tidied up,
Mhm.
exploited, or, pimped,
Mhm.
whatever, prostituted. We don't usually use the word prostitute when we're talking about kids because they can't legally consent to sex, so they can't be prostitutes, right? So
Mhm.
they're victims of rape or whatever rape and whatever else that's been done to them. But they're gone for the whole weekend. Well, that probably means that they've had sex
Mhm.
and been raped by upwards of 40 people over the weekend. They come back to their home, and the flyer says
Mhm.
found safe on Monday, and they get sent back to their parents' home after they've been used all
Mm,
weekend long with no counseling, no services, no nothing. And this happens, and oftentimes exploiters they'll start off slow. They'll let you come home a little bit, and it'll just be a weekend thing, and you'll be thinking it's part of you being their girlfriend. That's called Romeo pimping. And oh yeah, I'm going out to party. And
mhm,
you start to get indoctrinated, and then before you know, you don't come home at all.
mm,
And this is kind of the progression. So our hope is to interrupt that so that the first time that they're being exploited, they can come into our home and they can find some healing, and their parents can find some healing. Their parents can get counseling while the child is get counseling. The child is getting art therapy. The child is getting case management. They're getting a loving environment that allows the parent to get some perspective, because the parent is also traumatized. Their child just went through this.
mhm,
And so we've been having more discussions about early intervention, diversion programs. Foster care is just not working. We know
mhm,
that, especially foster care, the combination of foster care and human trafficking, not working because the level of trauma is so intense,
yeah,
and the level of a trauma bond with the exploiter is just insurmountable when you let it go that long. And basically, they have to go through that, just so you know, at least in California, they got to go through that revolving door of having being an exploited or run away, go get exploited, a couple of weeks, come back. They got to go through that at least 5 times, maybe more like 10, before they will be considered for a foster care home. So imagine that parent is trying to figure out how to serve that child for upwards of 1 year, seeing their child get thrashed and raped and beaten and become drug addicted and all these different things until they are placed in foster care. The parents, they're overwhelmed. They will put their hands up going, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything to help my child. They go into foster care. Foster care, they don't have any emotional feelings about it. It's like, hey, you got a bed, you got food, you want to leave, that's on you. The bed will be here when you get back. And so then they go out, they go do their business. A lot of them are in foster care actively being exploited. And there's no there's no love. I shouldn't say that, because I know a lot of loving foster parents,
mhm,
but it's oftentimes not the anchor in that home. It is a system offering,
mhm,
unfortunately, and it's not enough to sustain somebody to keep them in the bed. So much more is required.
mhm. Yeah, and these kids that they just keep continuously running away, then they disappear, and then, they're never found again.
Many times
Mhm,
they're not found. They are, there was a story recently, and this wasn't of a foster child because she was already 19, but I just came across an article. There was a exploiter who was running one of the largest rings in Danville, California, for 13 years. And he had recruited this girl in Livermore, California, and she was 19. And, on the promise of a professional makeup business where she would be going around with famous people and doing their makeup for them. And she had been scouted by two people that seemed to be legitimate business people. They gave her a business contract. Anyway, she ended up getting um, pulled into exploitation, and she was trafficked locally. And they finally decided, we're going to send you to Japan. Because she was a white girl with blonde hair. They said, you're going to make a killing, and you're not coming back. So they're going to put her on a plane to Japan, and she was never going to be seen again. And the day before that happened, she managed to get away, and reported that what was going on. She was in New York at the time, and she reported what was going on, and that was when the first charges were brought against the exploiter. And then later that prompted a complete investigation of him, and later a huge uh, 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 case was built against him, which landed him with, I want to say he got 157 years for exploiting, a bunch of women and children over a 13-year period. So anyway, all of that to say, these are very organized operations, and there are people that are being sent out of the country to be trafficked, and there are people that are being sent to live to be sex slaves to people. You wouldn't, you'd like, no, like, no, in
Mm,
dungeons, literally, in cages. Now, these are extreme, these aren't the norm, but I've seen both of those situations with my own eyes,
mhm,
talk to the people. Most of the people, however, are really dealing with psychological manipulation and coercion that preys upon someone's personal vulnerabilities, where they want, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They want food, they want housing, they want love, and mostly they want love.
mhm. Yeah, with the coercive control, that's a very, scary cycle to break.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's huge. It's really, really hard to break that trauma bond. I have found the only way to break it is to be consistently counter. So your love is there, and then through prayer,
Mhm,
you're offering your love, you're praying over uh, that person constantly, and then you are encouraging them to go through what's called the stages of change, where they are um, they're learning, they're becoming contemplative, they're
mhm,
learning that this person didn't really love me.
mhm,
And when they start to feel your love, and and then you're praying for them, and they start feeling God's love, then just like, this is a counterfeit love. This love over here, it beats me, it uses me for its purpose. It tells me that I'm only loved when I get when I say yes, when I
mhm,
agree, when I'm compliant. This is not a real love. This is a counterfeit love. Whereas this one over here, I just cussed the house manager out, and she's still like, honey, no, still, come on, let's get back on track. And she's still here. And I'm yelling at her, and I'm saying no, and I'm not willing to do this, and I'm not doing that. She's still here?
mhm.
Huh. Must be love.
And that's what the ticket is. I mean, they just I'm sure that's very difficult, you
Very.
know, uh, yeah, because 'cause I'm sure that takes years to overcome, and, you know, I'm sure you have them working with psychologists as well.
Oh, yeah. Cognitive behavioral therapist, trauma therapist, doing all kinds of art therapy, somatic therapy, exercise, nutrition. We have someone coming in and doing a relationship class with them. We have a domestic violence counselor who comes in.
Mhm,
I mean, it's a very rich. We do life coaching. And then also the other piece that's so powerful is when you begin to cast vision for their future. That's
mhm,
another piece, it's like, um, you're going to deal initially in our first phase of the program, you're dealing with your current hurts and your
mhm,
pain. But then as you progress and you start feeling more healed, it's like, what's my life about? Who am I? And so that's where it's taking that time to go, okay, seems like you're a little more stabilized now.
mhm,
Let's start talking about what you like to do. And, the person who comes in the door, the first day they come in, they don't know what they like to do. You
mhm,
ask them, what do you like to do? They were never even allowed to tell you what they like to do, or what color they liked, or what food they liked. If you ever watch somebody who's a survivor of human trafficking or domestic violence when they first come out, they literally will look around.
mm,
They're looking for cues. Somebody tell me what I like. Somebody tell me what to eat. Somebody tell me where to go. The mind control that has been over them. But if you catch them 6 months stabilized, they have wants, they have desires, they have hopes. And that's where we hope to be partnering with them to help them achieve that.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I used to work on a psych unit, and I won't keep you too much longer,
Yeah,
but
no worries.
there was a 17-year-old girl there, and she said, "Oh, just can you take me home? Can you adopt me?" And I said, "I don't think they'll let me," because I just don't think they'll let me. She says, "I don't know why I'm here in this world." And I
Oh,
said, "You're here in this world to make the world a better place."
yes.
And she kinda, like, contemplated she kinda cocked her head and contemplated that and kinda just slid down the nurse's station and down the hall, and,
Mm,
I think they need to be told that, you're here to make the world a better place. I
yes.
That's what we're all doing, and you're
Yes.
doing a fabulous, fantastic job.
Oh, thank
So
you.
impressed with your Love Never Fails. I
Oh, thank
If
you.
anyone has any questions, how can they reach you?
So you can go to our website, which is www.loveneverfailsus.com. We're also on Facebook. It's Facebook fan page. We're on LinkedIn, Love Never Fails Us, Instagram, Love Never Fails Us, and Twitter, Love Never Fails 5. You can also reach us on our 800 number if you have someone that needs services right away. And you can give us a call there at 844-249-2698. And then you can also email me. And my email address is Vanessa, Vanessa, at loveneverfailsus.com.
Thank you so much for coming on, and I'd like to have you back on for some
Yeah,
updates.
I would love that.
That
Thank you, Marianne.
I've
Thanks.
learned so much. So, don't jump off, Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Vanessa Russell in the future and other exciting guests. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm